Chrissy Owens and welcome back to Glairy-Free. Today is day 2. We're going to be talking about a couple of things that are really going to help you on your journey. Number 1, let's talk about some of the benefits of actually going gluten-free and dairy-free and why the combination is so helpful. And then after that, we're going to talk a little bit more about intolerances and allergies and some things you need to be made aware of as you are starting this journey as you're moving forward. So, the first thing, let's talk about some benefits. There's a lot of benefits to going gluten-free and dairy-free, especially if you do have some kind of intolerance or an allergy, obviously. Now, again, let's review. An allergy and an intolerance are two very different things. Now, sometimes you can experience some of the same symptoms with an allergy and an intolerance, but the severity is on a completely different scale. With an allergy, you have to be actually diagnosed. So when you say you have an allergy to wheat, that would mean that you have celiac disease. And if you have an allergy to milk, that's lactose intolerance, and it's severe. You know, it's a lot more severe than just a basic intolerance to milk. So just be aware of that. Those are both things that you actually have to be diagnosed with if it's an actual allergy. Intolerances are a little bit easier to track, and sometimes intolerances are indicative of an allergy. So just because you feel like you only have an intolerance doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have an allergy. Celiac is among the top 10 most misdiagnosed diseases in the world, meaning not that people are being told that they have celiac disease all the time, but it's actually that they don't have celiac disease, and that's the misdiagnosis. A lot more people than actually think it have celiac disease. So if you feel like you're having severe reactions to gluten, specifically, you need to probably be tested. But this course and this 2-week cleanse that you're doing will be a really good indicator of whether or not you need to be tested. You may do a little bit of reintroduction at the end of this course just to see how you react to gluten or dairy after you've been off it for 2 weeks. If you go back to it, to either food group, and you have a massive reaction still, as much as you had before the class, it's indicative of a possible allergy, so that at that point you may want to go get tested. If it's lessened, it may be that your body needed a break from either one of those items and that you might be able to reintroduce 1 or 2 of those items back into your diet here and there. It completely depends on the level of your intolerance and your symptoms, so be watching your body. But a few of the things that are beneficial by taking on this cleanse or this lifestyle. For me, it has become a lifestyle just because my body reacts so much better when I'm off of these things. Now, as an intolerant person, I do have the ability to every once in a while indulge in something that has a small amount of one or the other. If I decide to go and have a few of these things that actually contain both items, I do find that my swelling gets very, very bad, especially in my hands. And I also experience some other of these symptoms that I'll talk about in just a minute. So for me, it's more of an intolerance. If you have a severe intolerance or an allergy, that's probably not possible for you to reintroduce these permanently back into your diet. So just be aware of that. But some of the benefits of actually going gluten-free and dairy-free, let's get into that list. So let's talk about some of the problems that maybe led you to taking this course in the first place. You may have experienced some gas. You may have experienced some bloating, water retention, nausea when you've eaten gluten or dairy, IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, constipation, headaches, joint pain, fatigue, emotional distress, believe it or not, anxiety and depression because of inflammation in the brain and inflammation in the joints can lead to anxiety and depression. That was a huge trigger for me with dairy. Dairy was a major problem for me and led to extreme depression and extreme anxiety. In fact, I was having massive anxiety attacks in the middle of the night when I was sleeping, waking up with my heart racing, my face sweating, and I talked about that a little bit in my introduction with my story after having my son and struggling with postpartum depression because of hormone imbalance. So that is very, very common as well. So don't disregard emotional and mental barriers as well because of eating these items. You may experience anaphylaxis if you have a severe intolerance to either one of them, just like you would have with peanuts. Now, what is anaphylaxis? It's basically where you can't breathe and you have to take medication to open your lungs back up. It's inflammation in the lungs and respiratory distress. You may experience major weight gain or major weight loss very, very quickly if you are intolerant or allergic to something. You may even experience infertility. PCOS, endometriosis, those are things that a lot of times can be remedied in some amount by changing your diet. Believe it or not, most people believe that you have to get on either birth control or some kind of hormone balance medication to be able to fix that, but that is not always the case. In fact, sometimes those hormone medications actually make things worse. So changing your diet first should be your first step when you're actually dealing with some of those hormonal imbalances and some of those medical issues. You may find that it clears you up a lot faster and better than a medication would. Increased PMS and menstrual pain. Again, another hormonal issue that can be solved by diet a lot of the time. And many times, even if it doesn't 100% cure your symptoms from those kinds of things, it does. Every single time, every person that I've talked to who has done this because of some type of hormone imbalance or some type of female condition has improved because of their diet being improved. It's all about seeing what happens in your body and, reacting to inflammation, how your body is actually reacting to inflammation in your body. Inflammation in general, if you find that your joints are inflamed or you experience pain in your joints after you've eaten something with gluten, you notice that you're sore often, and when you walk, your back is popping all the time, that is a sign of inflammation, and that can be caused by eating something with gluten or dairy, or consuming some kind of product that contains one or the other, which is why this 2-week detox is so important. Because after you get it completely out of your system, which as I've tested and as I've gone through in my own way, I've gone through and tested a couple of different timelines, and 2 weeks seems to be the perfect place to start. It gets things out of your system, allows your body to completely cleanse itself, and then you have a really good idea. You can pinpoint what's actually causing your problems. So inflammation is a huge one. And acid reflux, that's another one. And then the last one is skin issues like wrinkles that are premature, rashes and outbreaks. Those kinds of things are all a sign of either an allergic reaction or a major intolerance to something that you're consuming or or you're exposing yourself to. So all of these things are really important when you're actually trying this lifestyle change out to be aware of. Those are a lot of the different signs of intolerance. Now, the good news is that a lot of times when you actually go through this process for this 2 weeks, you'll find that either your symptoms for one or the other food group may decrease when you try to reintroduce it to your diet, or they may even go away. Now, it's more common for this to happen with dairy intolerance than it is with gluten intolerance. Gluten intolerance tends to be something that's pretty permanent. If you're experiencing some problems with that, it probably is something that will continue for the rest of your life. However, it's interesting to note that with gluten intolerance, there's a protein that's produced in the gut that we will talk about a little bit later in the course called zonulin. But basically what that does is it opens your gut up and down. Now, this is a naturally occurring protein that you find in your gut, but basically it sends a message to the gut to open up a certain amount based on the amount of protein that is present in your gut. Now, when it opens up and closes, it allows nutrition to get in. Now, there's also a receptor at the end of each one of these pieces called a villi. Now, the villi actually absorbs nutrition, and what happens when you produce too much zonulin, and that happens when you eat gluten when you're not supposed to, and if it's something you're intolerant to. But if zonulin is produced too much, it tells the gut to open up wider than it should, allowing things that normally would be kept out, like something that your body considers toxic, and actually allows that into your gut. Now, when that is allowed into your gut, that shortens and stunts your villi, which makes it, and so you cannot receive certain nutrition. This is why you see celiacs who are malnutrition sometimes when they're eating gluten still. is because their villi is not able to actually absorb the nutrition that they're eating, even if they're eating really well beyond the gluten that they're consuming. One of the hardest things for you to absorb when that is when you have stunted villi is lactose. So a lot of times when you have some type of gluten intolerance or an allergy like celiac disease, then you actually find that you may become lactose intolerant just because the villi is not able to actually absorb that. So when people actually go through this 2 weeks, they may find that at the end of 2 weeks, if they try to reintroduce a little bit of dairy here and there back into their diet, they are not as sensitive to it as they were before they started, because the gluten that they were consuming before is no longer there. And it's basically repairing the villi and allowing them to absorb the nutrition and the lactose that they were not able to absorb before. So that is something very interesting to note. However, that being said, a word of caution, I would not recommend, if you feel like you are having some type of reaction to milk, specifically, and milk products like cheese and butters and things like that, I do not recommend putting that back into your diet full blown after the 2 weeks just because you think you've cured yourself with this process. The thing with milk, and the biggest problem with milk, in my opinion, is that it actually contains hormones. And so if you are struggling with some type of hormone imbalance, and one of your biggest issues is like bloating or PMS symptoms and things like that, thyroid issues, then actually adding foreign hormones back into your body through milk, even if it's hormone free, milk is naturally hormone filled. It's just how milk is. Breast milk is the same. Goat's milk is the same. Any type of milk that comes from an animal or a human is actually containing hormones that are specifically made for the other animal that it's feeding. So, milk from a cow is formulated for a baby cow, and its very purpose is to help a baby cow grow at an accelerated rate, whereas a baby's milk that comes from humans is also made to help them grow, but at a different rate. So when you introduce hormones that are foreign, it can still cause some of those symptoms like bloating and weight gain and all of those things that we've talked about if it has something to do with hormones. So I am not suggesting that you go ahead and you throw every single type of milk item back into your diet after this 2-week cleanse. What I do say is that you may be a little bit less intolerant to some things that contain some types of milk protein. So you may not be as sensitive to things like cheese powders. You may not be as sensitive to whey protein, but like I said, I'm not suggesting that you throw it all back in there. For me, after I did this my very first time, I did notice that every once in a while throwing in a little bit of dairy product into something that I was doing didn't affect me as much. I was gaining 10 pounds overnight when I would even eat like a handful of cheese or a slice of cheese. And it was 10 pounds. That's not an exaggeration. That was all water weight and water retention. And then after going through and taking out gluten from my diet, after that 2 weeks, I was able to eat a piece of cheese from now and again, and I didn't gain any weight overnight. So with that being said, we're moving on to day 3. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about some great stuff. We're going to be talking about nutritional needs that will help you stay on track if you're trying to lose weight or trying to maintain your weight while you're doing this journey. Because what you may not have realized when you first started this journey is that it's actually possible that you'll lose some weight while you're doing this, especially if you've been experiencing things like bloating and water retention, and that may have been part of the reason why you started this course. But you may find that naturally, without even really trying, you may lose a little bit of weight in a good way. Either that, or if you've been underweight because of some problems with nutrition, you may find that you're gaining the weight that you need to be healthy. So overall, we're going to be talking about some of those nutritional needs and how to maintain that, and some food groups you should be shooting for. Also, we're going to be talking a little bit more about some things you should be aware of if you are intolerant, and some things that you should be aware of if you are allergic to either gluten or dairy. So stay tuned. I can't wait to talk to you tomorrow, and just make sure that you keep going. Again, you need to make sure that You're not being discouraged. This is going to be a great thing for you and for your family. If you're doing this for yourself, be proud of the fact that you're doing something for yourself. It's important for you to take your health into consideration. If you're doing this for a family member or a child, you have done one of the best things you could possibly do for them by being in this course and learning more about their intolerance or their allergy. It will really affect them for the rest of their lives. It'll affect your family for the rest of your life, and becoming more aware of your health and the health of your family, there's truly no better gift that you can be giving yourself and your family. So I can't wait to talk to you tomorrow. We'll talk again soon. See you guys.